wildflowers. Therefore, in order for the village garden to conform to this proposed regulation, most of the caging would have to be removed. Without proper protection, the goal of growing and demonstrating a healthy woodland will be lost, as well as thousands of hours and village dollars.
Sheila, how far from the tree section would be 4 feet?
Well, if the board would like to sit down with someone like me, I will be happy to.
How much it should be?
There is no.
The answer is a little more complicated.
The answer is extremely complicated, and I would be very happy to lend my expertise. Okay, for those of you who don't know, I had 20 years as a landscape designer. I own my own company. I would be more than happy to sit down and explain this, but not now. In addition, during the past several years, our committee's annual May plant sale has shifted its offerings to include a variety of native plants, which include many that are branched from the ground up, as well as perennials and wildflowers. These plants are also growing in the village garden for residents to observe, and we have encouraged our resident customers to protect these plants with caging if they are not fenced, as we have done in the village demonstration project. Again, our concern is that the caging in the proposed ordinance does not allow individual property owners to protect their plants as needed with large enough cages for the plants or long enough periods of time for those plants to grow and survive. In our own backyard, the book whose printing and distribution to all residents was funded by the village, the last chapter reads, "We hope you are determined to help protect, preserve, and enhance this treasure. If we are not vigilant in our efforts, our unique woodland environment, a respite for all residents, will be lost over time. We as a committee are not opposed to a fence ordinance per se. However, we are disappointed and concerned about the proposed ordinance in its current form. We know that the mayor and the board have repeatedly demonstrated their commitment to restoring the village woodlands, and we hope that this board will consider this point of view and reject this proposed ordinance in favor of one that includes better protection of our woodlands, both those that exist now and those that we wish to create in the future." Thank you.
Louise Samuelson.
Louise and Roger Simonson, Simonson, at 725 Juneberry Road. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all because Roger and I are both voting or hoping that you will consider this draft and make it more flexible. And we want to show you why that's important. And we're going to use our own property as a demonstration. Vanna here, pointing out. But we have a unique piece of property that is truly Whipperwoods. Many, many wildflowers, not only trillium in the front yard. And about 6 years ago, we did put up a protection fence in order to preserve what I call a legacy. And so after seeing that, I want to show you what our entire property looks like and how much we actually...
Louise can see it.
Oh, what are you holding up, Reggie? I thought you were holding up the trillium. Anyway, this is our whole property, and this is the area that we fenced, 1/3 of it, because we recognize that it is really important to have a place for the deer to be able to move. And that's why we chose to do it in that manner. So we have 2/3 open, 1/3 that's fenced.
Where's the front?
The
Main
front-
road, where's
Turn it around.
Juneberry?
Turn it around.
Where's Juneberry?
Juneberry is right here. This is the back.
Oh,
and
okay.
this is the front,
Okay.
okay? Can you see? All right. Yeah. All right, now, what I hope we can show you here in the blue is where we have trillium and other forms of wildflowers. And here we have wild geranium. And you can see the fencing mainly protects this area of wild.
And around this bush,
Sure.
that's great. Thank you.
Can you see that?
Now I can.
Okay. And then we'll be glad to leave this. Then what we did was that we took the ordinance and we drew in what it would mean to our wildflowers in terms of where the fence would go. In other words, it would have to be moved back, and so we would lose almost entirely the whole area we've tried to protect. And so as you think about this, I think the important part is that you do have corridors for the deer or places for them to eat, but that you also have to consider some flexibility in how people can apply the fencing to protect the woodlands.
Ready to follow?
Okay, I'm speaking for Margie Call.
State your name.
Oh, I'm Betty Deloy, D-L-O-U-H-Y, at 1255 Studio Lane. And I'm speaking for Margie Call at 2975 Arrowwood. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to speak to you. I'd like to address the purposes of the ordinance and their application to deer fences. The first purpose is, quote, to improve safety and welfare by regulating visibility, unquote. This does not apply to deer fences, which are 100% see-through. Number two is, quote, to allow adequate screening for privacy, unquote. This doesn't apply to deer fencing because they are 100% transparent and not used for privacy purposes. Number three, quote, to prevent blight, monotony, and blocking of view corridors, unquote. Deer fencing certainly does not block view corridors because the eye may not even notice it since one can see right through it. Blight is one reason for which deer fences are erected. And deer fences prevent monotony by allowing various levels of vegetation to grow, such as perennials, shrubs, and canopy trees. Number four, quote, to prevent channeling of wildlife in smaller areas, unquote. This does apply to deer fences, but such a small area is presently deer fence that it's hard for me to see that this is reason enough to justify such a restrictive ordinance. If channels need to be created, that can be accomplished without resorting to an overly restrictive and complicated ordinance. Number five, quote, to prevent against obstruction of stormwater runoff, unquote. I agree entirely with this goal. Any kind of fence blocking the flow of water through the creeks should go. Number six, quote, to preserve the character of the neighborhoods, unquote. I really believe this is a matter of taste, and legislating personal preference is a terrible idea. After years of trying to restore and protect my woodlands, I think this top picture of my side yard is a perfect example of the character of my neighborhood as I see it. The bottom picture shows the fence on Sue Auerbach's property and how wildflowers have flourished within the fence, while the neighbor's unfenced property shows an almost decimated understory. If this ordinance regarding side yard setbacks is enacted, these wildflowers will be history and years of preservation will be gone. On a personal note, I feel targeted by this proposed fence ordinance. I've worked hard to put my 2 acres back to the way it looked when we moved out here 22 years ago. Only about 10% of my property is protected by a deer fence. However, in complying with the proposed setbacks, much of what I've done to restore the woodlands would be destroyed, and that breaks my heart. I've also put in hundreds of hours working in the village garden, and what will be lost there also breaks my heart. It's not just the trillium, it's all the other native plants that will